Sometimes in life things happen that make us believe, in that very moment, that they are nothing but misfortune, an unexpected loss, something suddenly taken away, an event no one ever wished for. At the time, all we can see is pain, regret, and the feeling that everything is going wrong. But as time passes and the pieces slowly begin to fall into place, we realize that some things that seem to take so much from us were quietly leading us towards something far more important. Life does not always change through grand decisions. Sometimes it begins with the smallest moments. A chance encounter, an unexpected turn, or simply an incident that at first seems painful and hard to accept. And yet, those very moments, in ways no one could have imagined, can end up changing a person's entire destiny. This is the story of a boy who once believed he had been terribly unlucky when he lost what mattered most to him. Yet from that heartbreaking moment, life unfolded in a series of unexpected events he never could have foreseen. In the end, he came to understand that some things do not happen to destroy us, but to save us in the quietest way possible. To the boy, the dog was not just a pet, it was his closest companion, always there in the ordinary moments of his life. Every morning when he woke up, the first thing he saw was that little tail wagging happily at him. Whenever he felt sad or lonely, the dog would quietly sit beside him, as if it understood his feelings without a single word. They shared a bond that was simple, yet deep enough to make them an irreplaceable part of each other's lives. Every day, he made time for his dog. They would go for walks, play together, and share the calmest, most peaceful moments. To others, it might have looked like the familiar image of a boy and his pet. But to him, it was a bond that felt like family. The dog could not speak, but through its loyalty and constant presence, it made him feel loved and never alone. That was why he never imagined a day would come when he might lose it. He believed those walks would go on as they always had, peaceful and familiar. He could not have known that in a single moment, everything would change, and that from then on, his life would begin to turn in a direction no one could have predicted. Then came the day he had never expected. On an afternoon like any other, he was walking his dog down the street, never imagining that seconds later, everything would be different. The road looked ordinary, with no sign of what was about to happen, until suddenly a rabbit darted out from around the corner. In an instant, the dog's instincts took over. It yanked hard against the leash and bolted after the rabbit so fast that the boy had no time to react. He shouted in panic and ran after it, but that familiar figure quickly disappeared from sight. In the middle of the crowded street, he stood frozen, his heart pounding and his mind completely blank. To others, it might have seemed like nothing more than a dog running away. But to him, it felt as though he had just lost a member of his family. He searched everywhere, calling the dog's name in desperation, hoping to hear its familiar bark in return. But the longer he searched, the more hopeless he felt. In the end, overwhelmed by fear and helplessness, he placed a missing notice in the newspaper, along with a photo of the dog and a heartfelt message. All he wanted was for the most precious thing in his life to come back. If you believe that sometimes losing something can be the beginning of something greater, comment the number 1. 2 days passed after the dog disappeared, and to the boy, they felt endless. Every sound at the door gave him hope, only to disappoint him again. He could hardly think about anything else. All he could think about was where his dog might be, whether it was safe, and whether there was still a chance it would return. Then, just as his hope was beginning to fade, a young woman unexpectedly appeared at his door. In her arms was the very dog he had been searching for over the past 2 days. In that moment, he could hardly believe his eyes. Relief washed over him instantly, as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from his heart. He rushed over and hugged the dog, overwhelmed with joy and emotion, too choked up to speak. At first, he still felt a trace of frustration toward the dog for running off and causing him so much worry. But that feeling quickly softened when he looked up at the young woman standing before him. With a gentle smile, she explained that she had found the dog wandering alone and kept it safe after reading the missing notice in the newspaper. The way she spoke, softly and naturally, gradually put him at ease. What began with a few words of thanks soon turned into a conversation that lasted far longer than he had expected. They exchanged small stories and light jokes, and before long, both of them realized how natural and comfortable the conversation felt. The boy had no idea that the moment they stood at his front door that day would become the beginning of a relationship that would change his entire life. After that meeting, the boy and the young woman began talking more often. What started as simple check-ins gradually turned into shared everyday stories, small joys, and even their deepest thoughts. Everything developed naturally, without drama and without haste, but enough for both of them to feel the other's presence becoming more and more important in their lives. The more time he spent with her, the more he felt that she was an unexpected gift life had sent him, after the days when he thought nothing but bad luck had come his way. Then one day, they decided to go on a real date. It should have been a beautiful day, the kind of happy memory so many couples hope for. But no one could have imagined that it would become the greatest turning point in his life. A sudden accident happened, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. While he was still recovering from the shock, the doctors came out with news that made everything fall silent. During the examination, they had discovered a tumor in his brain. What mattered was that it had been found early enough for treatment. If he had not been admitted to the hospital that day, the truth might not have come to light until it was already too late. Lying in the hospital and listening to the doctors explain that the tumor had been discovered in time, the boy was left speechless. In his mind, each event began to appear with startling clarity, like links in a chain finally connecting. If the dog had not chased after the rabbit that day, he would never have panicked and gone looking for it. If it had not gone missing, he would never have placed the notice in the newspaper. If that notice had never existed, the girl would never have appeared at his door. And if he had never met her, there would have been no fateful date to bring him to the hospital at the exact moment he needed it most. What he had once seen as trouble, bad luck, and misfortune had ultimately become the very reason his life was saved. The dog he had once blamed for running away had, in a strange and unexpected way, set in motion the chain of events that rescued him from a far greater tragedy. He looked at it and smiled softly, as if for the first time he truly understood that life does not always give us the answers right away. So often, what happens before our eyes looks like a loss, a mistake, or a door suddenly closing. But perhaps, somewhere else, it is quietly opening a new path. This story reminds us to be more patient with the hardships we do not yet understand, and to hold on to faith in our darkest days. Because sometimes the very thing that seems to take everything away from us is actually the thing quietly protecting us.